Firstly, thank you very much for coming, and congratulations for coming, because I've asked about 5 people who haven't replied, and the ones who actually asked face-to-face, the look on their face was if I was the Pope being asked to take down his balcony. They were so shocked and appalled to be considered to be in this wonderful age group that I don't know if I'm going to talk to them again. So thank you very much for coming. I think it's going to be a great day. It's the brainchild of my business partner, David Wellesley, who came up with it many years ago, and it's wonderful to see that it reach fruition. But most fortunate to have, in our first talk, John Standing, whose name goes before him, really needs no introduction. He's for 50 years, he's 60, 70 years, he's been a mainstay of our what will be a wonderful cultural legacy, I think. The great strength of your generation is, like any older generation, you connect with the generation before. And I'm afraid we will be asking you to talk about some of the greats of that time. We're truly honoured to have you with us. I've started watching some of John's films, and Rogue Male was the one I watched yesterday, and it's on YouTube. Absolutely brilliant. So we have Laurence Geller, CBE, another remarkable man. I didn't realise, I'm afraid, until I started looking at these speakers, that none of the 3 of them have retired. So we haven't really got anything to tell you. But what we will do is hopefully have some interesting stories. Laurence says that he will explain is doing some of the most important work possibly in medicine at the moment. And I'm going to let him explain, but it is truly remarkable how he has come to this stage at a certain stage of life, given his background, which was in hotels. He's one of the great hoteliers of the age. And it's a very interesting link between hospitality and hotels and senior age, late age care. Gina Sturdy-Morton as well, and he'll introduce himself more about what he does. Quite phenomenal at a certain time of life to develop an enterprise which seems so straightforward, as a sort of virtual club for old people where you host the events which are so necessary for many of them, and you'll explain why. But above all, it's fun, and it's celebrating this time of life where if you have a little bit of health and a little bit of wealth, and you don't have 2 demanding grandchildren, what a great time to be. And so today we're just going to have some fun, I think, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So, Johnny, you came to the hurling club the first time many years ago.
I did.
Why was it? What led you here?
I was a soldier at the time, and I was stationed at Winchester. I was a green jacket. And I fell into an amazingly pretty girl when I was at Winchester, and she said, "I'm going to have a dance in London." And I said, "Oh, really? How?" And I didn't know her at all. And she said, "Would you like to come?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Anyway, I'll send you an invitation." She duly sent me an invitation. And I thought this was a private house. I had no idea it was some sort of, I don't know what, a sports club. So I arrived at the dance, and she was utterly adorable. And she subsequently became a marchioness. So she did frightfully well, and she pulled something. And I thought I was going to pull her because, and failed hideously. And I was just a kind of, penniless soldier, to be perfectly honest with you. But I came here not knowing what it was. And I've subsequently been here several times to watch my son play cricket here. But otherwise, because I was moderately sporty when I was a boy, but only to play cricket. And I couldn't play tennis or anything like that, because it was a rather sissy game, which of course it isn't at all. It's rather spectacular tennis.
And your uncle was a great cricket commentator, wasn't he?
What?
Your uncle was
my uncle was a cricket commentator before the war. He with Jono. He was one of the early Test commentators. And his name was Michael Standing. He was a lovely man, and he was in the ARP. I know that during the war. And I remember the war terribly, terribly well, because we were shoveled into a basement. My mother, who was an actress, and my grandfather, who was another actor, and my two great uncles. One was called Percy and one was called Wyndham, and they were both actors as well. They were disasters, and they were in Los Angeles, playing tiny parts in films for people like Hitchcock. One was allowed to say yes quite often, and that was about the strength of it. And occasionally, when things got really fizzed up for him, he could say no as well. But my grandfather was in films like Lives of a Bengal Lancer, and finally he was bitten by a black widow spider that killed him, he was an adorable man. Niven was a friend of mine and said that my grandpa had been incredibly kind to him when he was a young actor to start with, because he'd also been a soldier. And he just, came from the army and popped into whatever it was in Los Angeles, where he became, immensely successul and adorable and incredibly funny and wondrously irreverent. As I suspect my grandfather was as well. And when actors are, we don't give a monkeys about anything very much. Do you know what I mean? It's all kind of, because we are, we have to do what we're told, no matter whatever happens. I mean, you're given a part and play it, and that's the kind of end of it. But you have to do what the director tells you, and I did a play with Maggie Smith. We did Private Lives for, I think, 18 months, unrelentingly, both here and in America and on Broadway. And listen, I'm not going to take up everybody.
And before that, you had your first part, big part really, was with Laurence Olivier and David Niven, wasn't it?
It was Walking On. Yeah, I was a spear carrier. And it was, and the job started, it was for Stratford, and I went Paris, Venice, Vienna, Belgrade, Zagreb, Warsaw, London, my first gig. And my first night in my first job, there was an enormous rat in the passage outside my dressing room. And I was a Roman, a spear carrier. And I took out my sword and I chased this bloody thing all the way down the passage. And I thought, this is the beginning of, the madness of my job, really. And
you're still working.
Oh, Lord, I've just finished a film with Michael Caine, who, poor old darling, has had a terrible trouble walking, but he was brilliant in it. And
The Great Escaper.
It's called The Great Escaper. Yeah, it's good. I've just got to read you a little bit. I've got to read you something that Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote. Let us cherish and love old age, for it's full of pleasure if one knows how to use it. Fruits are most welcome when almost over, all of which is utter bollocks. Old age is a real fucker, let me tell you. There's nothing good about it at all. It's utterly dry. I fall over from time to time for no good reason whatsoever. I just crumble. It's hellish. I'm about to be 89 later this year, and it's not much fun, any of it. I don't think anybody to tell you it's lovely is talking through their...
So you're about to be 90, I think.
What?
Did you say 80? I thought it was 90.
I'm going to be 90. Yeah. I'm going to be 90 next year.
Yeah. And do you think... But all three of you have this extraordinary gift, if you like, in common of not wanting to retire. I haven't quite asked you that, but I just made an assumption that if you retired... your family would probably become an item on the news. I mean, how would you deal with that, given how incredibly busy you all are? You don't agree with retirement?
No.
Christ,
no. It would be so boring. I mean, you have to keep going at some level, even if you fall over. It's worth a shot, let me tell you. I really mean it. I really mean it too. So just keep trucking, keep doing something. And above all, taking some form of exercise. I've got a dog that pulls me over from time to time and we go walking out. It's a Labrador, so it's, it's big and friendly and kisses everybody in the street. And it just loathes other dogs. But that aside, it's wonderful to use a dog or whatever. Anyway, just to keep, reading, watching television, watching a bit of porn, anything you like. Do you know what I mean? anything that cheers you up, really. So,
but looking forward is also so important, but you've got so much to look back on. I mean, you had some wonderful times with Peter O'Toole, and I'm sorry we have to ask you about them because they're so amazing, the stories. And there was one involving a teapot at a funeral I was hearing about.
Don't, it's too awful. But anyway, I told this story at Peter's wake, which was at the Old Vic, and he was a really rated actor and a proper old-fashioned laddie, a proper star. And an absolute darling. And he came to see me in a play once at the RSC, and he came round to my dressing room afterward and said, "Johnny, you're a very funny man," and promptly cast me as a perfect pig in a thing called Rogue Male, in which I was playing the heavy. Would I come and join him doing this? We better rehearse it. We better work on it in Ireland. And he had a little house in Southern Ireland, in Connemara. And I said, of course I will. He said, meet me. We will be flying Aer Lingus. There's a potted plant on the way to Aer Lingus, Johnny. I shall be sitting under it smoking weed. So I thought, okay, that'll be fine. I'll join you there. And so I joined him there, and we went to his house, and the script was waiting for us in plastic covers, and naturally it was never even taken out of the plastic covers. And we were there for 2 weeks alone, just talking to one another and laughing and smoking. And one day, and we used to go to the pub every night, and Peter was off the booze then and not drinking at all. And we'd go to the pub and we'd have a joint or two, and then we'd go back to his house and play snooker. And we'd play that till about 4 a.m. Then we'd go to sleep, and then we'd wake up and have a fish lunch, which meant opening a can of sardines. So we'd eat the sardines, and one day Peter said, "Johnny, have you ever fucked a nun?" And I said, "No, I don't think so. No, I don't think I have, no." So he said, "Then why don't we go and try?" I said, "Well, no reason, really, I come to think of it." So he said, "We'll go down to the nunnery." So we went to the nunnery, and we were greeted by an absolutely charming little red-faced nun who was adorable. Said, "Oh, Mr. O'Toole, come in, we'll sit. We'll go into this room here, and there's a big pot of tea waiting for you." So there was this huge brown pot of tea. And this is the story, and this is true. I told this story at his wake. And Peter said, "Well, hang on a minute, I'm just going into the lavatory because we're going to have a suck on a bit more weed." So we then had a suck on weed, and the smoke was pouring out, and the little nuns were on their knees and doing all this sort of, they were talking to the dictator, the celestial dictator. They were having a chat with him. And then we went in for tea, and the nun leapt up onto the table and sang a really disgusting version of The Sound of Music. So we were completely flabbergasted, and all the wind was completely taken out of our sails, and inevitably we did nothing. And when I told this story at his wake, from the wings, as it were, at the Old Vic, a voice came across, "John standing, there was no brown teapot." And she was there. The nun was there, Sister Agnes. "Will you come and play golf with me?" "No, absolutely not. What's your handicap?" "I don't know, about 26. I said, "Well, that's useless." I said, "Because you never get anywhere. We'll spend our entire time wandering around looking for balls." And she is the most adorable woman. "Well, you know, I'm an Irish nun, so I'm never troubled by anything like this." She said, "I'm never troubled by anything. I've got, Irish nuns are not like normal nuns at all." "You are not kidding." The disgusting version of The Sound of Music she sang with, "The hills are alive with the sound of fucking." And you thought, whoa, you're a nun, for Christ's sakes. But she was adorable, is adorable, and she's still trotting around. And of course she does wonderful things for people because she has an advanced sense of humour. about the whole game of nunnery or whatever the religious trick is.
Yeah, it's very important to remember there's no intellectual criteria about getting old. So we're not here to really talk about anything remotely serious. But that is wonderful. I mean, it's so important to hear what we all wanted to hear, frankly. Thank you. But Laurence, you were the national triple jump champion when you were 15.
Well, it was better than doing anything else.
And you were the first Jewish man to play in a national rugby team.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was an experience.
If I might be in for the high jump if I ask there's anyone who doesn't know what a triple jump is. Does anybody know what a triple jump is? Doesn't know? I might ask one of our team, Harry, you're talk. Can you come and show us what a triple jump is? Just make your way down. And Harry is a wonderful sportsman, wonderful colleague, and it's very important to show us how triple jumps work. So it's such an achievement, I think, to be a national champion. But look, you must be a very driven man to achieve what you have as one of the great hoteliers of your generation. You were in the Israeli army just when you had the first female prime minister of Israel. What was that like? Was it, again, using you as leverages to the past? I mean, and tell us how you ended up in the Israeli army.
First of all, as you can probably tell, there's not a very thick book of great Jewish triple jumpers, and even thinner book about great Jewish rugby players. So I was hardly the typical Jewish lad in London, but sports was an escape from the ghetto, if you will, for me. That was fine, but one would be fairly subject to a lot of anti-Semitism growing up. I did manage to get in the hotel industry, ran away from home, got back to England. I was an assistant manager at the age of just 19 at the Park Lane Hotel. And there was an incident with Prince Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. He became king, where the barber had offered to give him a very close ear-to-ear shave, shall I say. And they came to me to complain, and I thought it was rather a good idea. Anyway, the Major de Vries called me in after lunch, and he was rarely sober after lunch, and said, if you feel that way, why don't you bugger off and join those Jews in their army? So in pinstripe and tails, and I suspect I'm the only person ever so done, I volunteered for the Israeli army, not speaking a word of Hebrew, not knowing anybody there. It was an experience. I was going to be Paul Newman in Exodus, Jew amongst Jews. Instead, what did they call me in basic training? Limey.
So you've got Harry, he's a very busy man. Can you just give us a quick demonstration of a triple jump there?
Would you rather I do it, Harry? I'm happy.
I was going to ask.
What?
I didn't want to ask, but I mean, so maybe we can...
It's known as hop, step, and jump. Hop, step, jump. Now the beauty of that is I was the Middlesex schoolboy long jump champion for 3 seasons, and every time I got to the nationals, I never made it to the finals. Well, I found, it was a wonderful thing. I was walking away having been thrown out of the long jump championship. I saw these lanky boys, older than me, and there were 5 of them standing by a hip, and I'm watching this, and I said, I've never seen this before. When were the heats? No heats. When were the semis? No semis. I said, why? They said, there's only 5 of us that have qualified with the distance to be at the nationals. Aha! So anyway, I found out even less people did it at the age of 15 or under, or 16 or under. So I practiced on the paving stones in London, and as you know, they are fairly equidistant. They're all the same size. And I went back and showed the school coach. He said, do that again. He said, I think you'll qualify and probably win the Middlesex Championships, which I did. So I found that there was only 5 people that had got the national standard. So I go to the pit, I'm looking at these people, I'm wearing spikes, and I came up to a conclusion. If I couldn't win this, and if I wasn't winning after the first 2 jumps, I was going to spike the other 4, and they were dead. Anyway, they were even worse than I was. That was the story. It was literally the kingdom of the blind.
Sure. Now, can you just critique, Harry, just a quick demo here, please.
Hop, skip and a jump. Not bad, I went further. No competitive edge. Well done, Harry.
Thank you, Harry. So, Laurence, it's very interesting what you've been doing with You're the Chancellor of West London University, and you have set up an MSc program in dementia care, which is completely groundbreaking, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was, very quickly, I got to be Chancellor of the university, not because of skills, talent, or anything else, but it used to be called Ealing Technical College, and it morphed till it became a university. When it was Ealing Technical College, and I'd come back from Switzerland, I took a job at the Connaught Hotel, as a chef, wanted to get promoted, and the only way they would promote me if I did part-time chef's course at then Ealing Tech. So they actually thought I was an alumnus of the university.
And do you still cook?
Oh, yeah.
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 That's one thing about your generation is how long the men can continue in their marriages denying any ability to cook whatsoever.
Oh, yes, I cook, but Jenny does everything else.
Yes, yeah.
She can mend fuses, paint things, do everything else. I can't.
So you've really worked in all aspects of hotel management.
But the university that was, I didn't realise they asked me to become Chancellor. It was 111 out of 112 and about to be closed by the government. So we were the new Vice Chancellor and myself were sort of last chance saloon. And so we devised a plan. This is the university. If any of you probably will know one of our campuses. As you're going west towards Heathrow, you've got GlaxoSmithKline, GSK on the left. Opposite, there's some office buildings. That's one of our campuses there. So we were broke. I sort of figured out how to make money out of their real estate. We wrote a mission statement that we would become, it had to be different. We'd become an ethnic university and a vocational university. Now we're a very wealthy university and number 28 in the country. So we focused, when I saw this and I'd started dementia, I realized that dementia was senior care was as primitive, and this is 6-7 years ago, it was primitive in this country and in the United States where I'd spent 40 years, primitive as the hotel industry was nearly 50 years back. So the first thing I wanted to do was get education in. So you start at the top. I built a master's science course, which we still have, first in the country, anywhere, in dementia care. And now we've done vocational courses. And then I built the Geller Institute of Aging and Memory to do research and to start national standards for dementia care qualifications. Because if you don't have people, you don't have qualifications, A, how do you build a business, an industry? B, how do you get consistent care? And how do you give people of my generation and a wee bit older the dignity, the respect, and the quality of care they need? Because I fall down too, John. We all do, but I want us to live better, longer, healthier, with dignity, grace, and entertainment.
Who's Grace?
My ex-girlfriend.
But the link between dementia and your sport, which just to rewind, that comes through concussion, your studies on concussion. And that's very important work that you've done, isn't it?
Yeah. I was a rugby player, fine. I came back to this country and I was asked to chair a charity with a really serious rugby player called Jason Leonard, who was then the most capped English rugby player. So Jason and I were chairing a charity, and he wanted me to meet some of the people in the charity, a bunch of ex-British Lion rugby players. They were then in their 40s, and I was watching them and seeing some indications, and they said, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I'm building dementia care homes." And so they all told me their stories of their forgetfulness, how they'd been concussed. So I started to fund some research. Fast forward, comes COVID and litigation, class action suits, I think group litigation, I think they call it in the UK, by some ex-professional rugby players who are out of money, and they decide they get trapped by litigation lawyers. They're going to sue the Rugby Football Union, the Welsh Rugby, World Rugby, anybody they can find, because they've got dementia. There is actually yet to be a causal link between the two, but there's obviously something. And so I was offended by group litigation, because I then found out that it was promoted by lawyers who wanted the fees, and in group litigation they'd get 30 to 40% of the award, and the lawyers in turn were backed by private equity, so the players were irrelevant by it. So with another famous rugby player, Simon Shaw, we started a charity to protect. I'd seen what happened in the States. The game gets influenced, the rules of the game get influenced by litigation, not by need. So we started this charity. Oliver Dowden, then DCMS secretary, found out about it, asked me to become the ministerial advisor. 2 years forward, we put together a situation. I'm very proud that 2 or 3 weeks ago we announced the new national guidelines and protocols, and the United Kingdom is now the leading country in the world dealing with concussion in sports, and it is doing some wonderful research. There are 2.5 million cases of concussion annually. And I hope we've taken fear away from parents and families and made it simpler to get treatment. So I'm pretty proud of that. Hence dementia.
Yes, yeah. So that's a great achievement. The best dementia test I saw was an advertisement for donation saying if you've lost your phone, don't worry. If you've lost your phone and find it in the fridge, give us a call.
Let me tell you, look, I lost both my parents from dementia, and I knew my father had dementia, although I choose to ignore it a year. He was an alcoholic, but when I took him out to lunch, as I would meet him once a month in his home in Vegas, I took him out to lunch once when he didn't know the name of wine, let alone Chardonnay, and he probably single-handed kept the Chardonnay industry alive for decades. I knew it, and I wish I would have not ignored it or want to ignore it all those years. Similar with my mother. So we started this dementia thing, and I want to share with you just for 2 minutes why I started it and what I wanted to do. I started it because I was chairing the Alzheimer's Society's national campaign to fundraise. I am a prodigious fundraiser. Could I have all of your addresses, emails? I'll be in touch later. But it is a... We started it saying we could do something in London using my hospitality skills where everybody else had failed to build care homes in central London. It was too expensive real estate. So we said we'll be better than our others. That's fine, we are. But we also had an ethos, and I haven't deviated from a second. And let me share it with you because I hope it'll help. One, we said, get the people off psychotropic drugs, which all the GPs and doctors and care homes prescribe. It's like giving morphine to a cancer patient. It's a sedative. Two, they don't eat. Don't eat for a lot of reasons. The food is slop. The carers can't be bothered to fight it, or whatever. So as an ex-chef, I decided that I would do the research at the University of West London, and we did that, and we came up with a diet that was for people really in their latter years, anybody over 70. No real surprises, it's basically a Mediterranean diet, sort of. And we then developed 200 recipes to be the equivalent of 1 Michelin star, not because I'm egoistic, it's because we wanted to entice people to eat, because if they eat more, they're stronger. If they're stronger, they can do the mental and the physical stimulation exercises, which we believe in. If they can do all of that, and we can put people in a social situation, and they can have social interfacing, they will live longer. So I told this story 4 weeks ago at the Crick Institute, the World Dementia Council Summit, and there are all these researchers there, 300 or 400 Nobel Prize aspirants. And I said, so we did intensive research, blah, 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 blah. And I said, and we found out the reason that our people are living 4 times longer than their estimated term when they come in. And that's simple. They're having a good time, and they don't want to die. And neither do I. So I'm looking after myself.
So you have this wonderful Love Day brand now, isn't it, really? It's a dementia brand. It must be one of the first of its kind. And if you can see in the Sunday Times, in the, I think it's the home section, isn't it, yesterday, you'll see all of these beautiful pictures of your new home up
the one in Abbey Road.
Yeah, in Abbey Road. And it's fascinating how do you use the colours and lights, and it's beautifully thought through, and it's one of the most positive things I've seen in the Sunday Times ever, I think.
I'm going to say one thing to this group. You know, our parents created a generation. They went through, our families went through World War II, went through whatever they did. They created the society that we and our children enjoy. They created it. We are creating the society for other generations to enjoy, and we deserve the best. We deserve dignity, and we deserve to live long, busy, and fulfilled lives. Never forget it, and know that people like me are dedicated to making sure that happens. And in my case, self-interest is pervasive. But we are creating a society, and we deserve the dignity and respect and the longevity for having created what we all live in today. And please, please, please never forget it.
Thank you. Okay, very, very privileged to have you with us. And Julian, you come from a very different career background in finance, looking after small, medium-sized companies, and then something happened, which you're going to tell us about, which led you to becoming a sort of slightly senior serial entrepreneur and a guest at the coronation. Which is why we couldn't contact you for about 2 weeks, because he was still queuing, I think, to get in or out. But
queuing for the loo, I think. It was quite a tough process. Yes. Well, I started out in life trying to become a priest or a vicar, and pretty well everything in life is about sales. And I realized that was one area where I could try and live the life, but I was not going to be a good salesman. So I went into a career as a banker, and as someone said, that's profits to profits, are you dyslexic? But I went into banking. I had a good career in banking for quite a number of years and worked with some of the largest companies, some of the most interesting companies. Left the city at the beginning of the century and started advising smaller companies. And it was actually in this room about 15 years ago that we launched something which was here called Silver Screen, and many of the faces out there will remember it, and do remember it because it's still very active. And it was all about creating opportunities for people over a certain age to have fun, and to do it with the least amount of energy and effort possible, and as affordably as possible, and actually build a community. We are about animating communities, because human beings we are tribal animals, we're community animals, we're animals that require society and the company of others. And as much goes on in the mind and goes on in the way in which we live healthy lives by being with other people, whether it's in a nunnery or elsewhere, as in any other context. Life is more interesting if... We say there are 4 rules, and I love the rules you have for dealing with dementia. We have 4 rules for dealing with the simplicity of old age, or indeed any stage of age. Someone to talk to, something in the diary, a sense of humour, and a responsibility, a reason to get out of bed. I think if you've got all 4 of those, you're doing pretty well. So our view is to try and create an environment in which we have those 4 things, and other people may as well. We have a friend who probably at the moment is driving an ambulance out to Ukraine. He does that sort of thing. And he says, Julian, very successful businessman in his time, he's now retired. Julian, there are 3 stages in life. You learn, you earn, and you return, by which he means you give back. But actually, we're all in the return phase. Apart from you're still in the earning phase. But all the rest of us are heavily in the return phase, where you can either opt learning and earning is mandatory. You don't have a choice. You have to learn, you have to earn, you have to have a living. But when you get to a certain age, and it is the third phase of life, because now we retire with a third of our life still ahead of us, you get to this stage, and you think, well, am I just going to sit here, or am I actually going to enjoy myself and use everything that I've learned and the bit I've accumulated, or the bit I need to accumulate, and actually have fun doing something different? My wife, Maria, and I, both passionate about music and theatre. She's very knowledgeable. I go along for the ride. And so that was the area in which we focused. 15 years ago almost, in this room, we showed, next door we showed a film, Mrs. Miniver. And we came here for tea afterwards, and it was the start of people talking to each other, meeting new friends, creating, animating a community. Well, it's not rocket science. It's incredibly simple. It's not MSc material. It's not the grand stuff, although it has its moments. And it was in this room that I had to introduce John Julius Norwich after lunch once. I've known him since I was a child. He and my father shared an office in Beirut back in the 1950s, so I'd known him since I was yay high. And I had very carefully written out on a piece of paper 45 words that I was going to use as the introduction. And John Julius looked at me and said, "Julian, what have you got on there?" So I said, "Well, this is what I'm going to say." He didn't look at it. He took out an identical piece of card on which there were 27 words which were going to supply him with a 1-hour talk. And at the head of it, it said, "My favourite subject, me," which was, in effect, the subject I'd given him to talk about. And John Julius talked in a riot of nostalgia. But what was really compelling about him, and what I think is compelling for all of us, is he was not living in the past. He was always looking at the next book he was going to write, the next project, the next place he was going to visit. He wrote effectively biographies of countries, and he was always looking to get under the skin of the countries he was going to visit. And so I think, from our perspective, we get to the point of now what? And we think, well, we've got all this time, we've got all these opportunities, there's no point in looking backwards. Chameleons and rabbits and parrots, I think, are the three animals that can look behind them. We are not. We look forward. That's what humans do.
The Aborigines don't have a word for yesterday or tomorrow.
Well, that makes perfect sense. They've got some very, very good Dreamtime stories there. But we live in the present, we live in the future, and our view is having something to do that we can enjoy. There are great advantages of having a job in retirement and volunteering. One of the advantages is that you don't have a boss. If you create your own business in retirement, it's very, well, I've got Maria, but normally one doesn't have a boss. You're time fluid, and you can give what you have, not what someone else wants to take from you. Volunteering, of course, has another huge advantage, and that is that although you don't get paid, you get to meet people you wouldn't otherwise meet, and it's cheaper than golf or owning a racehorse, which are two great advantages. I'm wearing the watch I got as a games maker during the Olympics. It's a slightly bright colour. And I was a driver, and that was enormous fun. As a driver, I had at one stage, for 2 days, I had a man called Dr. Alexei Pleskov. He was the chief medical officer of the Sochi Olympics. And driving him round, he explained he was there from the medical perspective. He said, "Julian, I am also in London to see about program of games makers. I am here to learn how to do it because in Sochi we will have program of games makers." I said, "Well, Alexei, that's great, but do you have a tradition of volunteering?" "Yet." So I said, "How are you going to attract 60,000 volunteers to act as games makers in Sochi?" "Julian, please. We have already sent out 60,000 letters saying you are volunteer." So my main passenger for those 3 or 4 weeks was Dame Kelly Holmes, wonderful person. And how else, other than volunteering to drive around in a car, was I going to spend 3 weeks with one of the icons of the sporting world sitting next to me? Not always healthily. She had her adoptive father and 2 of her school friends in the back of the car at one stage. She was in a wonderful, slinky green dress. She'd been an ambassador for BP. I was driving her to the England women's hockey match. I said, Dame Kelly, you need to be in your tracksuit. You can't be in that dress for this. You're in the wrong outfit. Oh, Christ, Julian. And with that, she said, close your eyes. I've got to change. And sitting next to me as I was steaming through London, breaking the speed limit as fast as I possibly could and pretending that my eyes were shut, Dame Kelly changed out of her slinky dress and into her tracksuit. I almost had a coronary at the moment at which she said, Junior, you can open your eyes now, I've got my knickers back on. But so there are moments when I think actually doing something for nothing is fun.
Growing old disgracefully.
I hope so.
So you're very fortunate as an actor, really, that there's no career end to it. You don't have to retire when you're 52. Or in United Arab Emirates, you retire when you're 47 from a full pension. You can keep going.
I suppose so, yeah. I mean, I've just finished doing a film with Michael Caine and oh, no, I mustn't do this. This is what's so simply frightful. I must remember her name. Jackson.
Glenda Jackson.
What? Glenda Jackson. Glenda Jackson, who is, I have to tell you, simply brilliant in it. And so it involved learning an awful lot of lines and doing all the sort of things that we've been doing for a very, very long time. But it was terrific to do. The only thing that was really awful about it was we had to shoot some of it in France and inevitably couldn't because of Brexit. And it made it incredibly difficult. And so we had to make France in England. And, of course, the architecture is totally different and everything. But because it's movies, it was possible to do because of blue screen and all the things, the technical aspects of it were sorted it all out. But it was a shame in many ways that we can't, and it's sort of typically English, I think. I'm afraid, our weather and our politics are very peculiar at the moment.
No, we've got very little time, but I just wanted to mention family. My mother-in-law is a Kazakh, and one of the reasons we have such a good relationship is I've never had a conversation with her. And they've kind of nailed it, because being nomads, they have to figure out a way of looking after the grandparents. And the youngest child, the youngest son, wherever you are in the world, has to stay behind and look after the grandparents. And the first granddaughter belongs to the grandparents. It's called the grandparents. So you're all great family men, and just the little research I've done, it does seem to be absolutely essential that you get your family priorities in order without being free nannies and help. Yeah. That would be quite interesting. For you. Do you think that's right? That family becomes much more important as you get older, and having that relationship calibrated in the right way is essential.
Yes, it's vital, I think, isn't it? Yeah. Families are absolutely wonderful. I have a marvelous family, and my wife's just had cancer. And has beaten it and got it again, and then had a problem with her heart. And she's here today talking, far more intelligently than me and far more reverently than I probably do. But yes, my family and my children and everything are all such an enormous part of our lives and make our lives, I think, really well worth living, above everything.
And through your family, you become the chairman of the International Churchill Society. Oh, so that's a large part of your life.
I have been doing that for 20 years, and it was a thankless job until about 10 years ago, when I met an amazing lady called Jenny Churchill, and it's taken me 10 years to persuade her, and at my old age, she took me on as a charitable cause and married me last year.
Congratulations. And What would Churchill think of this? Because he didn't really hit greatness until his mid to late 60s. Would he?
He had a date with destiny in my mind.
Yeah.
Look, the man was a wonderful man. I've been privileged to learn a lot about him, but what inspired me to him was very simply, when I first started studying him, I bought a house. I was living in the States, bought a house in Westminster, went to find a biography on him, and that started it. And but this man kept, unlike most politicians today, he kept his ideology, his beliefs. He would open his big mouth, get knocked down for them, get up, and do it again and again and again. And frankly, that's an inspiration to me. And I've been knocked down so many times, I have calluses on my bum, but I'm going to keep getting up till I die.
Good. A great inspiration to me was Churchill saying that I've taken more from alcohol than alcohol's taken from me. So I think we need to all have a drink and taste the great man. We're so honoured that you could join us on this Monday morning. It's the best antidote to Monday morning-itis I can think of, apart from sleeping until lunchtime, which is how we used to deal with it as undergraduates. But thank you very much. And your Love Day project is here represented, and your team are here as well, Julian. Sadly, you don't have a team here promoting things, but we'd love to answer some questions if you're around afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.